we've got to broaden our thinking out around sex. So it's not just, having sex. It's how we feel about ourselves. It's about excitement. It's about creativity. So it's about coming alive. Now, we don't want to, again, set ourselves up by expecting to get that all from one person. So I think that the couples that are successful, they find excitement beyond the marriage. And I'm not talking about having sex with other people. Some people do that, but things that really deeply turn you on, like, I don't know, at a glance, I'm imagining, what you're doing with your podcast and your Instagram and showing women how to be strong. Like that seems to be a realm of real aliveness.
Okay.
That's keeping you glowing. And I think that that's super important. So I think when it comes to mothers particularly, is to broaden out beyond the relational, which is just like, I should be having more sex with my husband or whatever, right? Into where is turn on for me right now in the picture? What brings me joy? What gets me excited? I mean, for me, I found my way back to sex in the early years of being a mum through dancing. And I had a little group. It was 3 of us who were really, really into it. We were all new mums. We'd all just had our second child. And we all felt like we were losing our identities. And we started doing these sexy dance routines. They were super fun and silly and burlesque. And it was like a combination of having a laugh with your friends, getting back in shape, and just feeling sexy and feeling alive and like dressing up. And, it was so, so good for me. And it wasn't for someone else. And I think sometimes you need that. So I think, my encouragement would be, add some selfishness to the picture. Like, think about the map of, what turns you on in life, and make sure you're doing something beyond your relationship. Now, when it comes to the relationship, what you want to be doing is just find a way to connect, find a way to connect, find a way to connect. Always the same with your kids, right? That's my opinion. Like, just keep connecting and you can't really go wrong. If you start superimposing ideas about what it's all supposed to look like, you're probably going to go wrong. So you need to find a way to connect that is authentic.
Yeah.
So that's some version of telling the truth.
Yeah.
About what you're really experiencing in a way that, knowing your partner as you do, in a way that they can hear it,
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about, finding things that bring you joy or make you feel alive, or that you find exciting, being a really great first step, which I think is really interesting. And was going to be one of my next questions, was kind of, many women can experience, they might feel differently about their body image after pregnancy, or the changes that are going through motherhood. And there's so many things that we might feel if we are feeling down about our body image. My question to you was going to be, how do you start to feel sexy again? Because you're not necessarily feeling sexy when, like, I don't think I was feeling my sexiest when I was 4 months postpartum and my cesarean scar was just healing and I had 2 twins here. How do we start that? And I think that's a really great tip. Find something that just excites you and brings you to life. And then really interesting about your experience with the dancing there. That's really great. Yeah, finding something that that turns you on. And what about kind of self-exploration as a first step? Or is that, again, is that just a completely separate world of sex that doesn't necessarily impact sex with a partner?
I think it's all connected. But I think one thing I would say, to all women on the planet, let's hope they're listening right now, is, we've got to stop being so hard on ourselves. I'm so thrilled that there's this sort of sexual revolution going on in terms of information around female orgasm and, the permission that comes with it. But there's a shadow side to it too, which is this sort of pressure to be uber sexual and to be multi-orgasmic and to be constantly masturbating. I'm just like, there is no one way, when we need to learn to, love ourselves and meet ourselves where we're at. And if you know, sometimes you just feel like shit and you just want someone to stroke your head. And, you know, let's hope you have good communication with your partner or someone who's willing to do it, or you stroke your own head. You know, it's not always sex. Sometimes it's comfort. You know what I mean? Just being with your body in a way that's gentle. You know, for me, I often just will just like lie down on a yoga mat, you know, just shavasana, just be on the ground. My favorite yoga move, by the way. I'd be like the worst in one of your yoga classes, or super passive. But yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we need to just relax and release and be open and wait. You know, if you think about it in the past, I mean, I think a lot of the horniest times, I think they call it, what do they call it now? The younger generation, like borny, you know, it's when you're bored. You get horny.
I've never heard that, borny.
Oh, this is, you know, I've got teenagers now, so I get to know these things. But yeah, so, you know, often if you think about it, the times it's easiest to feel turned on, and when you have we're back to the, you know, my marriage ritual of the 2 hours in the sun, but it's trying to generate that feeling of being bored, you know, of being open, you know, of having like, you kind of just want to have a fantasy. If you're super, super busy all the time, you don't even have the bandwidth to have a fantasy.
But how do we find the space for that in motherhood or new motherhood? You know, that first year of motherhood, there is not that much time to be bored and feel borny. You know, like,
right? No, totally. Well, look, this may be controversial, but and I don't think it applies to everyone. But I would love it to be a socially acceptable thing to just take sex off the table for the first year. You know, it's unbearable. You should have that pressure. I mean, the plates of the earth, the plates of your vagina, the plates of your psyche are shifting so hard.
Yeah.
It takes time.
But I guess that's not going to be realistic for many relationships. Taking sex off the table for a year after you've had a baby might not be something that your partner feels comfortable with, or even that you feel comfortable with. It might be a bit, you know, if that's not an option, if people are like, no, I don't think I could not have sex for a year, but, you know, how do I find the time, because my baby's waking me up every few hours? I guess maybe
so
just
let's go gentler on it. I would say consider allowing yourself to take sex off the table, and maybe, you know, that could be take penetrative sex off the table, right? Or having your tits sucked if that's what you really don't want to happen, right? But, you know, permission, I think, is really important. The other thing I would say is question your assumptions around what has to happen. You know, people have these ideas in relationships that are very transactional, you know.
Yeah.
And particularly in America, you know, so many like, well, I overhear so many conversations, like, not so much my friends, but just women around who are like, you know, the blowjob for the bugaboo or whatever. Like, it's like this transactional thing with sex. And I don't know, that just seems like such a killjoy situation to me.
The blowjob for the bugaboo.
I mean, bugaboos are good, I have to admit, but, you know, blowjobs are great too. So if you're both into it, great. But, you know, it seems a bit like, I don't want to do the blowjob, but I need the thing. You know, just, I don't know. It's just not so sustainable when it's not coming from a real place. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So let's say, you know, the relationship is definitely going to fall apart if sex doesn't happen. Well, you still have to respect the stages of the process, you know?
Yeah.
Which means you're going to have to build in time to relax, nurture yourself, and be brave enough to communicate that to the partner. Because I think there's still this sort of, we're still living with a massive martyr archetype around motherhood.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, you know, our mothers were just, well, I mean, mothers throughout history have just killed themselves.
Yeah.
You know, by taking on too much and just serving everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that's definitely changing, but it hasn't changed. We're still in that process. We still have to be brave, you know.
And if you are, you know, so we sort of covered there, like, you know, the body image aspect and how to maybe start to think about sex again. If you are physically not, you know, feeling apprehensive for whatever reason, whether you've had a tear or, you know, however your delivery's gone, is masturbation and self-exploration something you would recommend? Like, look, figure out what it is that you like and then you can communicate that to your partner? Or should it be, look, let's the two of us sit down and...
No, I think it's a great idea if you can. I mean, it's not always translatable, right? Because masturbation is its own world, and then being with someone is its own world. And sometimes those two things overlap and sometimes they don't. But I would always encourage self-exploration. But again, more on the exploration than the masturbation. Like, it's like, if we can get to know ourselves in a sort of a multidimensional way, you know, how do I like to be touched? How do I like to not be touched? You know, just actually get in touch with what's actually real for you, not what you think you should be doing. Again, like, there's so much around, like, having those orgasms, getting those orgasms, checks in the boxes. No, you know, every, you know, as I don't know that much about Tantra, but I'm learning about it slowly over time. And it's so much about getting out of this results mindset and getting more into sensuality.
Yeah.
So however you can be sensual with yourself, and it might be, I mean, for me, I take baths all the time, which is wasteful on the waterfront, but it's my bliss, my pleasure. And, you know, it's like, I just love a bath with Epsom salts in, you know, to me, that's just like, okay, return just to the body and sensuality. Or I don't think you have these so much in England, unfortunately, but, you know, here we have Korean spas, which are these all women's places where you can go and like steam and get in hot water and just be naked, you know, have some time to be naked. So for me and some of my female friends here, like, that's been when we had kids, young kids, if we could just like every so often make a break for it and get together with the female friends and just like do some of that sighing and releasing and having a laugh and being like, oh my God, you know. And yeah, I think being able to get naked and be with your body without a kid hanging off it, without someone wanting to do something with it, you know, there's some kind of the reclaiming of the body, right? And being open to the body telling you what it wants, not you telling the body what it wants, what it should want.
Yeah, really interesting. So just a couple more questions before we wrap up. Like, when it just comes to the relationship now, so sex life, we've talked a lot about, but, you know, that the dynamic in the relationship will change when children come into the picture. If a couple is, I don't know, not falling apart, but if a couple is noticing like a breakdown in their relationship, what are the key things we need to do to try to maintain a relationship as parents? Is it have a regular date night? Is it share your emotions? You know, what are the things that we should be doing to try to maintain our relationship as parents?
Yeah, I mean, we have to find ways to connect however we can. Now, for some people, you know, it also depends on what your resources are, right? For some people, you can go away for the weekend and have a nanny, and other people, you can't do that. You might get to like put the kids in the other room and, you know, have a cup of tea together. So I don't think there's a one size fits all on that. And the same applies to therapy. Some people can afford that, some people can't. But the most important thing is to have touch points with your partner, and you can make your own rituals. I'm a big believer in rituals. So, you know, back to the tea, because we're British, we can talk about it, but you know, that you do nice things for each other every day. There can be small things, but, you know, it could be, you can build a little ritual around, you know, I bring you a cup of tea, you bring me a cup of tea. And then when we do this, we have a proper check-in. There's something called counsel that's used a lot it's a tool that's used a lot in couples therapy. And you can use anything as a talking stick, like a pencil, right? And the person holding the pencil talks from the heart about their experience, what they're going through, and you use I statements. So you go, you know, I'm feeling exhausted right now. I'm feeling like I want to connect with you right now. I'm just drawing from experience. Feeling like we should be fucking, but we're not. feeling like I want to go on a holiday with my girlfriends, whatever it is. So you just be honest, and the job of the listener is to not interrupt, to listen as open-mindedly as possible, and then to reflect. So when I'm done, I give the pencil to my partner and they say, I hear that you're, feeling exhausted and you want to go on a holiday with your girlfriends and you don't want to have sex, but you feel like you should. And they reflect it back until you're satisfied. You've got to be really careful. If you start slipping into an argument, you drop the tool, right? But you've got to, this requires some discipline. And then you switch positions. And it's just a way to be honest and not get sucked into those old arguments. And usually, in couples where they're arguing, it's that thing called shoot and reload. Like people aren't, once you get activated, people aren't really listening to each other anyway.
Yeah.
It's more like the feeling of separation gets reinforced, and that's what we don't want.
And what about if the person you're with isn't emotionally available on the level you need them to be? What if you're feeling all these emotions and your partner just isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question. That's such a reckoning. It's a reckoning about, what do you really need? Can you get those needs met in other places without destroying the relationship? Are you going to feel like you're in desperate, lonely hell for your whole life with this person? In which case, think about that. So, because we don't want that, we don't need that. And at the same time, people have their limitations. One of the things I think is tough is on heterosexual couples is that, and particularly around the motherhood moment, is that we just grow so exponentially. And often they don't, which is why a lot of marriages fall apart, because we just grow and grow, and we're surviving in all these underwater states and learning things about ourselves, and and men often they're just not forced to grow that way. We've had our bodies rearranged. We have to kind of keep going in this growth process. Otherwise, I think, we just feel stuck and dead. So yeah, I mean, that's just a huge question. And I think you just have to try your best to overturn all the stones and also give yourself permission. People change and things change.
Yeah, you just touched on a question that I had, which is, I found that I grew up a lot and changed as a person since motherhood. Exactly what you just said. I grew up just so much in the last 7 years, and I've gone on this huge journey of self-discovery. As I said to you, I feel completely content with where I am at and who I am, who I feel like I am, and that changes people. But can you change? It got me wondering about whether people can change independently and grow, as you just said, grow in different ways, but still have a really healthy, functioning relationship. And I guess, the answer, I suppose, would be, look, some people can, some people can't. But what I think I'm hearing you say is that if you are noticing a disconnect on an emotional level, try to, when you said turn over all the stones, try to prioritize trying to get back to the same level. Do what you can to try to reconnect on that emotional level. Is that right?
Well,
or do you just accept that they're in a different place?
I mean, I think it's both. Acceptance is always a good thing, but at the same time, we are like growth machines. As women, we want to grow, we want to nurture, we want to see things improve. So what do we do with that part of ourselves? For me, that's something I have to channel that, I can't just make this about a relationship. So it's got to, that was one of my wake-up calls, and I was talking about that in terms of codependency. You're just fixating on you know, the guy who won't see you, hear you, or whatever, it's going to be very unsatisfying. So I think we need to start thinking bigger about how we keep evolving our own energies and our this love of growth and nurture. So I don't think it's right to put a lid on that. And I think, you know, if I had a wish for mothers, is that they would all have more energy and more confidence and see that they're incredible. I mean, mothers should be, you know, running the world, and in a way they are, but they're also in this old-fashioned model of kind of being a bit enslaved still. So we have to look at that, you know, the bigger picture of liberation. Is this person blocking me growing, or is he just like not evolving as quickly as me? Is he willing? Is there willingness? Can I take him on a little bit of this ride? What parts of this ride could we do together? You know, psychics and psychedelics, remember, there are lots of tools out there. But there are people, I mean, I've seen couples do amazing things. I know a couple at the moment where the woman she's always been super sexual. She's kind of subdued it for the sake of the marriage and the kids, and has had a wonderful relationship with her husband, but has always had this big itch, has wanted to get involved in sexual healing, and, you know, has a real calling around it. And she's becoming a sexual surrogate. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's like, so there's, you have sex therapists where you're talking about sex, and then you have the surrogates where they're actually doing the sex. It's like hands-on sexual healing. So
I'm still like, huh, what?
Yeah. Just think like more sophisticated, depathologized prostitution, essentially. So it's someone who.
But you go as a couple?
You could go as a couple, but you could go as an individual.
Right. Okay.
A way to kind of reconnect with your body and your sexuality and move beyond the box with the help of someone who, you know, isn't your partner.
Okay. I've never heard of that, but okay.
So it's becoming a bigger thing over here, where it's all a little wilder, right?
Yeah.
I had never heard of it when I was in England, but the point about the story is this couple is going through it together. The guy doesn't want to do that and is pretty nervous about his wife having sex with other people.
Yeah, of course.
But he loves the wife and he wants to honor her. You know, he wants her to have her full life and her full experience. He doesn't want to get in her way. He only wants to be a support. And I think it's very brave what he's doing, it's brave what they're both doing together. They're being very, you know, real with each other, and it's terrifying because what if, you know, things change, and things do change. So I think that's important to look at. Where is the willingness in the picture?
Yeah.
And that's where you go.
Yeah. That's so fascinating. Well, I mean, I have never heard of that. So that
Glad I could shock you a little bit. That's good.
Yeah. Exactly. You have answered every single question I have. I think my final question would be, where, you know, if you just had to say, you know, 3 things that you think, you know, you've just had a baby and you want to make sure that you are prioritizing, you know, alongside parenting, you are prioritizing your relationship and to keep on a healthy track. What are kind of the 3 easily accessible, simple things that we can all do? You know, is it something like have a date night? I really thought it was interesting what you said, you know, come up with a little ritual, like we have, you know, I bring you tea and we talk for 3 minutes or whatever it is. What are just 3 really simple things that we can do? Or is there a particular exercise that you might recommend to make sure that we can prioritize our relationship alongside parenting?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, you know, cultivate some patience around the massive change that everyone's going through, patience and compassion for that, right?
Yeah.
Don't be too hard on yourself about it. But yeah, I think a date night is an excellent idea. And again, maybe be a little open-minded about what that looks like. It doesn't have to be going out to a restaurant and staring exhausted into each other's eyes, where you just go through the motions of,
Yeah.
ordering food. Just like, all I want to do is go to sleep. But, it's like, be brave enough to talk about what you really want, and maybe you take it in turns, maybe one week it's like, really what I want is to have you rub my feet while I'm in bed, and the next time is like, what I really want is just you to watch the football with me while I, drink a beer, and I just want you to sit there. Or I don't know, it doesn't matter, but just something that's real.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And actually there's a kind of a game or a tool called Lover Lover, where it's kind of related to what I just said, where one person asks the other to do something can be for 1 minute or 5 minutes. And it's an intimacy game. So it's, I want you to massage my hand for 5 minutes, or I just want to like nuzzle you for, for 5 minutes, or I want you to spend, 1 minute telling me something nice about myself. Or so you express a need and they express a need, and you can decide what your increment of time is depending on your level of communication.
Yeah.
But it's a sweet game to play, and it takes that thing of like, we've got to have sex.
Yeah.
Pressure, so I think anything you can do to relieve that pressure, because it doesn't help.
Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%. Absolutely. Sorry, I said last question. That's not true, because I just remembered I had a couple of questions come in from people, but one that I thought was really, really, really interesting, and this has come up in so many situations and conversations I've had with friends, this issue, and you touched on it before, I meant to ask you, this thing about porn. And I have heard so many scenarios where porn has become a negative impact in a relationship, and for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe they still have a healthy sex life, or maybe they aren't having such a healthy sex life, but porn has become something that one person in the relationship seems to be drawn to and the other person isn't. What are your views on porn? And if porn is having a negative impact in a relationship, in a marriage, or any type of relationship, how does that?
We need another hour to talk about this, frankly, but it's such a big one.
Yeah.
Such a big one. And it's reshaping brains all over the place, because it's just such a fast, instant gratification, and something that's so hard to, measure up to in, real life sex. So
yeah,
I do think it's problematic. I'm all for freedom of expression, and to, for people getting turned on by whatever they want. And I think some porn is wonderful, but I'm not a great fan, because I think it isn't helping people in their relationships very much. But I don't think that telling people not to do things has ever helped. So back to connection. How do you connect around it? We don't want to be shaming people for watching porn, or ourselves. If it's there in a relationship, is there a way to connect over it, to bridge the gap? The idea, I think, often around problems with porn is to start bridging back from the porn into the kind of real world. So when you're working one-on-one with people, sometimes it's about saying to them, okay, just try adding some mindfulness to the thing. So say your default watching images that have sound, try turning off one part of it. So you would turn off the sound. So you start using your own imagination, or you would turn off the image and just listen to the sound. So you start, because what happens is people just disappear into it, right?
Yeah.
And we don't want that so much, because then that's a setup, and then they go back to a partner and it's like, oh God, I have to, all of those problems. So, because I think porn generates different things: disconnection, performance anxiety, addiction, numbing, obviously. So yeah, I think you want to work with it and build. It's like any addiction, you want to build bridges around it. You don't want to just be like, this is bad, cut out the behavior.
Yeah.
I don't think it
Yeah.
works. Don't believe that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That answer.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, as you said, I think we could talk for an hour about it, because this is something that this conversation comes up all the time when I'm speaking to either women I work with or within my friendship group. I hear it a lot, to like varying degrees.
Yeah.
And but that is definitely really interesting and thought.
Oh, I have one other thought as well. So we were talking about the position of bridging. So we're taking the porn addicted person and saying we want to kind of inch you back into some real world, bridge into the real world. The same applies on the other side. So say I'm in judgment around my partner's porn use, and I'm just like, porn is destructive, it's bad for our relationship, blah, blah. Let me look at my own judgment around this. Is there some porn out there for me that actually I could get into? Because really now there's post Me Too, there's a lot of different porn out there. You know, there's a lot of like what I think is rather disgusting kind of incest porn with very young women, which, you know, I have my issues with, but then there's more female driven porn than before, you know, that is like really well shot, that has some scenarios.
Gentler.
Nice porn, nice people porn.
Nice people porn. Nice people porn.
So, you know, it's like, okay, can we go with some nice people porn and like inch our way in there, and, you know, and actually it can be really fun too. So it's sort of like, can we undo the judgments on both sides?
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you so much. So where can people find you on either social media or online, and you know, anything else that we...
So my Instagram is @thebananajane, and that's sort of my social media hub. And then my podcast is called Sex, Psychics and Psychedelics. I'm coming up on a second season of that. I'd love you to come on the show. And that'll be a YouTube show as well, live sex demonstrations and stuff. Yeah. But this is great.
Well, thank you so much. Honestly, thank you so much. It's been so interesting. You are fantastic. You also have a really relaxing voice.
Good. So do you.
And it's nighttime here, so I feel very relaxed and ready to go to sleep. But after I've cleaned my kitchen.
Excellent.
I know. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and it's been amazing speaking to you.
I've loved it. Thank you so much.